And before we start the session, obviously we're gonna talk about sustainable fashion. Before we start, we want to get to know about your consumption habit about clothing. So I made a quick polls for you guys.
All right, while everyone is hopefully doing the poll, I'm going to introduce ourselves again. My name is Eric, and I am a committee member of the Zero Waste store next to the Academy at UOM, Want Not Waste. We're doing this event as the first this year as part of Student Volunteering Week. And next to me, we're collaborating this with Noella. She is from the closet. And would you explain a bit?
Yeah, we used to do lots of sample sales in the student union, but we realized those activities was not really sustainable enough. So we decided to alter our closet value to be more ethical and relevant current to sustainable issues. So we decided to do more virtual events with students who studying environment management and gift wrapping session during Christmas time. And this is a sustainable event, and we are really excited to be part of this event with Waste One Shop.
All right, I see now 92%, 4% have voted. Just give it a few more seconds. But we're seeing interesting results.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to show the results?
Yeah. So how often do you buy new clothes? We got 50% of a few times a year. And where do you often buy clothes? We got 40% of fast fashion retailer, ASOS, Boohoo, Zara, and H&M. And I think that's the reason why a lot of participants enter to our event to get to know about how they can be more sustainable when they buy new clothes. And I think that's really good opportunity because we can provide kind of solution and some tips for them. So I want for our four panelists, I want to introduce four panelists now. So Claire, could you start to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm a fashion technology student and I suppose a part-time climate activist. Fashion and the climate crisis are both topics which have been of great interest to me for a long, long time. And learning about the intertwinement of the two led me to begin altering my personal relationship with fashion in my teens. This relationship has continued to grow and change through my academic studies and personal research, and has eventually led me to pursue research in the area of technical innovation and consumer attitude to slow and sustainable fashion.
Thank you. And Josh from Fallow Garms.
Hi guys, I'm Josh. I'm a co-owner of Fallow Garms. We decided to set up a vintage clothing brand during the November last lockdown. Me and two of my friends decided we had quite a number of clothes that we wanted to up and sell. So we got in contact with some friends, family members, basically saying, do you have clothes you no longer want? And rather than just sort of throwing them away, which I know a lot of people do, don't have the time to sort of put up and sell themselves, we decided to sort of collect them all together and decide what we thought would be the best sort of stuff to put into our shop and our online Depop page, and giving people the opportunity to sort of find unloved garments and decide for some people who don't want them anymore to sort of rebuy and keep all these clothes in circulation rather than them going to landfill sites, creating that sort of sustainable environment to keep clothes in circulation rather than just being thrown out for wastage.
All right, thank you, Josh. Thanks for being here. Next, Jenny.
Hello, hi. I guess for me, sort of sustainable fashion began with me being aware of sort of, I guess you would say, ethical consumerism more broadly. So I've been vegan for about 12 years, and in the last few years I've started to kind of look around at some of the other ways that I consume things and how I could maybe do that a bit more ethically, and I guess it's getting harder to sort of ignore a lot of the very problematic sort of working and labour conditions and practices and things in fashion. And you know, particularly more recently, I started to do a bit of research last year on it and found out some pretty shocking things about UK retailers and how, you know, they will burn unsold new stock and will sort of recycle less than 1% of it and things like that. So I've kind of started to think about it a bit more. My day job has absolutely nothing to do with this whatsoever. I actually work in higher education, and this is just something that I'm sort of passionate about in my spare time. So since about 2012, I've had a blog, and it started out to be about sort of vegan food, and it's sort of expanded now to be about all kinds of different things. So that was something that I kind of blogged about last year when I went to like a clothing swap, the sort of plus size one particularly, because it's hard to find good secondhand clothes in bigger sizes. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you very much. And our last guest is Maria.
Hi, I hope that I have my microphone on. I am second year student at University of Manchester. I am studying fashion technology. And I think that my journey with sustainable fashion started 2 years ago or so, when I discovered on YouTube watching videos this topic about fast fashion and how it impacts our planet and lives of many people. And now I am mainly like focusing on shopping with sustainable brands or secondhand. I am very rarely shopping in fast fashion, just if I really need something. And last year I also started sewing my clothes, so like to make sure that my impact is a bit smaller. And I think that sustainable fashion is just like being sustainable is just making the best choice for the planet that you can make at the moment. That's how I look at sustainability.
All right. Thank you for being here. So yeah, we will want to hear from you before we start the discussion. If you scan the following barcode, you should be redirected to our Mentimeter, and we will gather your thoughts on what does sustainability mean to you personally, as well as how to avoid fast fashion. We will collect that and then discuss this later. Would you like to start with the questions, Noella?
Mm-hmm. So we gained like 4 questions to Josh. And first question is, how did you get started with setting up your business?
Yeah, so we, as I said, we just as a collection of 3 friends have all been interested in fashion. I myself, I don't shop fast fashion. I don't shop through ASOS. For the last sort of 5-6 years, after I'm from London, so I used to go to sort of Camden markets and stuff. I love sort of shopping in second class, sort of second-hand vintage places. We sort of kind of understood that we had the sort of same ideas. We thought, well, why don't we kind of collect all the clothes that we sort of don't want anymore, we might no longer fit in or just not really want to wear. We all know that the kind of clothes that we had kind of bought can definitely be loved again. So creating a brand and a vintage page is just a way to sort of keep those clothes in circulation. So for me personally, yeah, I might not no longer want that jumper or those pair of jeans, but someone in Fallowfield or Manchester, or even obviously across the UK as we sell to, could obviously want it straight away. So yeah, that's kind of why we got started and how we got started.
Thank you. And second question might be relevant with current COVID situation. What has been the most challenging aspect of running a business?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We were very, very fortunate to get about 2 weeks in December before Manchester went into tier 3, where we were able to open a pop-up shop. So another one of our ethos is kind of to sort of create a community of fashion for students. As we know that lots of first year students have been locked in their accommodations and the fences were put up and stuff, which is horrible to see. So for 2 weeks, we were able to sort of get students out in a socially distanced venue. We used our partner house, Fallowfield. We used their upstairs, and we basically allowed the students to book a private session. So they could only come with their friends or their flatmates or people in their bubble, and they were given a half an hour slot to sort of do that. So obviously, yeah, the biggest challenge we've had is not being able to do that for the last month or so, but as soon as government restrictions allow us to do that again, that's going to be the plan.
That's good. Could you please explain like Depop as alternative to fast fashion?
So I think, as most people sort of know, Boohoo, Pretty Little Thing, even some ASOS outlets, they create clothes and stuff that are much lower quality purposely so that you will go and have to rebuy again. Whereas I think Depop, you're keeping clothes from older years that are much higher quality, but obviously we try and keep our prices affordable. So even if we are selling some designer stuff or some sort of bootleg stuff, it's still at an affordable price for students. If you do want to go and have a look on Depop, there's nothing on there that's more than sort of £15-20. When we had our shop open, we had a £5 rail, £10 rail. So yeah, we try to keep great quality clothes, but just at an affordable price for students and for young people.
Okay, last question will be, how has the pandemic affected your businesses? I mean, it might be like relevant for the second question, but if you have more.
Yes, we just got to sort of take the time at the moment to sort of still developing the brand. At the moment, our only outlet has been Depop, but we are currently building and looking to launch our website. So once we've managed to do that, we'll be able to do more than just sell clothes. We're going to try and get people to get involved, maybe write some blogs for us, get people in Fallowfield in Manchester to sort of get involved with our brand. We're also going to try and set up a buy, sell, trade. So if people want to come and sell their clothes to us, or they want to come in and trade some clothes, we're going to try and give that opportunity for them as well. So yeah, obviously at the moment with the pandemic, that's been difficult, but we're trying to take this time at the moment to look forward to the future when the government restrictions allow us to do so.
Thank you very much. That was Josh from Fallow Garms. And now we are going to ask question to Claire. And she studied fashion technology and experience on sustainable fashion design. And first question for Claire is, can you tell us a little about your research?
Yeah, sure. So recently I've become particularly interested in consumer relationships with clothing. I believe that tackling sustainability issues surrounding fashion need to start with lowering our enormous consumption levels. There's a very interesting gap in consumer attitude and consumer behaviour. So most consumers state they want to act more sustainably, but there's still huge growth in the fast fashion sector. And it's largely because, as Josh touched on, we've come to view clothing as items with very little value. So things that we just throw away very readily. A great example of this being Pretty Little Things, pretty shocking Black Friday deals, you know, very low quality clothing being sold for 5 or 10p. So I'm aiming to look into technological innovation with potential to raise consumer value perceptions of clothing by making high quality or customizable or made to measure clothing more accessible and a better option than cheap fast fashion. So the end goal would be to encourage consumers to keep their clothing for longer, care for their clothing better, and just have a bit more of an emotional relationship with their clothing.
That's awesome. And second question is, have you observed any trends in the sustainable fashion industry?
Yeah, so what is great is that there has been enormous growth in the sustainable fashion industry. And I think online spaces like Depop and Etsy and Instagram, again, as Josh touched on, are giving a platform to small, sustainable, often made to order or secondhand businesses. And these are seeing huge levels of success. So this does suggest that consumer attitude is starting to change. People are willing to spend a bit more money, dedicate a bit more time to finding more sustainable alternatives. But this change in consumer attitude also leads to huge levels of greenwashing. I don't think there's a single fashion company that doesn't have in place some form of ecological, ethical pledge or initiative, which in my mind is very, very dangerous if it's not backed up by real action. And unfortunately, they normally aren't backed up by real action. So, you know, consumption levels need to slow down. I think retailers know that consumers are becoming aware of this and are often attempting to alleviate a level of consumer guilt through empty promises in order to continue to make sales. So there are kind of two sides to the sustainable fashion industry, and it's important to be careful what you are classing as sustainable. But it is fantastic to see these more sustainable and transparent business models emerging, like Josh's, which sounds like very good.
Thank you. And last question is obviously because you study fashion technology, we wonder how has technology made fashion more sustainable?
There are loads, loads and loads of exciting technological innovation, and it's a huge question because fashion has such a long supply chain and is made up of so many different people, so many different components and materials. But in terms of the areas I'm particularly interested in, 3D body scanning has huge potential to improve value perceptions through improved fit and made-to-measure clothing being more accessible through a better understanding of consumer measurements. And this is actually being used by a number of companies now, companies whose sustainable credentials aren't necessarily top-notch, but it's good to see them in action. So M&S have used 3D body scanning to collect data on consumer body measurements to improve their garment fit. So this improves consumer satisfaction, reduces return rates, which are both really, really important in reducing waste. The consumer is less likely to dispose of a garment quickly that they think fits them very well, and the retailer is not needing to process or dispose of returns to such a great extent. Weekday jeans have also begun using this technology to produce made-to-measure jeans, which is really, really cool. And it eliminates the waste that arises from unsold garments as the item is only made once the order has been placed. I'm sure many of you are aware the problem of unsold stock, because this was really, really highlighted throughout the pandemic. You know, sudden change in consumer demand, retailers have these huge piles of unsold stock, which they have to dispose of, unfortunately, normally through landfill or incineration. So that's not great. And a made-to-order business model like this eliminates that problem and also improves the customer relationship as they have an item of clothing made specifically for them. Full garment knitting is also pretty commonplace now, really cool. So this is a process where a complete garment is knitted in one go, rather than being manufactured through traditional methods where like each individual bit is cut from a big bit of fabric and sewn together. So that traditional method produces loads of waste due to leftover fabric from the cutting process. So full garment knitting can produce whole garment in one go, massively reducing waste in the manufacturing process, and also produces a higher quality and more comfortable garment. So they're just two examples which are popping up commercially in the fashion industry. Really exciting. Just need to keep pushing for more.
Thank you very much for sharing your information for us, and hopefully our guests really enjoyed Claire's answer. And I will pass to Eric to ask to.
All right, thank you, Noella and Claire. Yeah, we've been discussing a bit about fast fashion, this buzzwords flowing around here and there. For those unaware of it, Maria, could you maybe explain to us what exactly fast fashion is?
Yeah, sure. Fast fashion is, generally speaking, brands who are making match garments in a very short time. So for example, like when we look at Zara is like the biggest fast fashion brand, if I'm not wrong at the moment. They can make a garment from like, you know, thinking about the design to actually having the product in the shop in 14 days. So it's like, you know, like it's extremely fast. And they like produce clothes that are of pure quality and like very cheap. So like people don't care much about them and they're very easily disposable, which makes them, you know, like a big problem in case of a waste.
Yeah, definitely. I think materials also play a big role in this, especially synthetics like polyester. Would you say that there are any differences in materials used in fast fashion brands compared to normal ones?
Yeah. I mean, like when we look at the products offered by fast fashion brands and products offered by you know, like more sustainable or like even like not sustainable but like a bit more expensive brands, many like I think that the most common used in fast fashion brands is polyester, which is like, you know, like it's in case of wearing it, it's not a bad material because like, you know, it doesn't wrinkle that much and it's quite like, you know, like you can wear it quite long, but in case of its impact on the environment, it's plastic. And we still don't really know about the impact of microplastic on us. It's quite obvious that it's not really good for us, but the research is still going in this matter. And it's also it's also a problem with natural fibers, because for example, cotton needs a lot of water. To produce one t-shirt, about 2,000 liters of water is used. So it's like a lot.
Yeah, I have one interesting statistic here. The amount of water used in the cotton production worldwide has reached 93 billion cubic meters of water per year.
Yeah.
And 1 kilogram of clothing needs 10 to 20,000 liters of water. I mean, that's just crazy, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and like cotton is also like, if you go to for example, H&M, most of their products will be made from cotton, polyester, or nylon. So like normal cotton, not organic one, or the one from recycling, like it's not that good for the environment. And it's also the case that actually like the cotton used for fast fashion is the worst type of cotton, because there are different types of cotton. And the one that is used in fast fashion is mostly Egyptian cotton, which is like, sorry, not Egyptian, American cotton. And it's quite short. It's fibers, it's quite short. So the yarn is not that good, and it doesn't last as long as, for example, the cotton that is made from Long Island cotton, which has much longer fibers.
Would you say that this poor quality cotton also contributes to the low prices in fast fashion garments?
Yes.
Is that the only factor, or are there other reasons that, as Josh said, there are like on some sales on Boohoo, or those fast fashion retailers, we can find just incredible prices on sales. Yeah. So what other factors would you say contribute to this?
It's also like the cost of it's also the problem with the payment the garment workers are gaining, because like most of our garments are made in China or Bangladesh, I think that, I believe you, I'm not wrong, in Bangladesh it's 0.06 US per hour for a garment worker. So it's extremely cheap to make a clothing in Far East Asia. So it also contributes to this price that is unbelievably small. And they don't care, like they don't really care about how the warehouses look like. So like, like if you don't pay for the maintenance, it's also like a big cut of price.
Definitely. Thank you, Maria. We will get back to you. This might leave everyone a bit discouraged about fashion, the modern fashion industry, but maybe Jenny, you can tell us a bit about how you manage to avoid fast fashion brands and fight against it.
So I guess one element is that, and I did mention this briefly before, is that it can be difficult if you're basically over the size of 16 or 18, as I am, to find secondhand stuff. And in my further back in my youth, it was eBay. We all used to like buy and sell our clothes on eBay sort of thing. So there'd often be stuff that I would buy secondhand then. And if you try and find sort of plus size clothes that are sort of from indie brands or that are ethically produced, it's just enormously expensive, and that's for a reason, obviously. And it's usually because it's been produced by people that are being paid a living wage, and that it's good quality and that it will last. So these days I do as much as I can to buy secondhand again. So on like Depop and Vinted and stuff like that, which is a bit more what people do now, but still on eBay as well. You can still find good stuff on eBay. And I also have been in the past kind of 18 months making my own clothes as well, and kind of flipping stuff that I buy from the charity shops. So you know, it's a little bit shameful that I only just started doing it, because my mum was a trained in fashion design. You know, that was her kind of career, and I inherited her sewing machine after she died, but I didn't kind of do anything with it for a while. But in the last sort of year and a half, I've really started to pick it up, and I cannot recommend it more, to be perfectly honest, because you can either alter things that you buy or that you have to make them better. You can buy secondhand fabrics. That's a big thing that I do. So I will go to charity shops to buy like old curtains, old tablecloths and things like that. So this dress that I'm wearing is made from IKEA curtain fabric. You can do a lot before you even get to the point where you buy fabric brand new. And even at that point, you can buy dead stock fabric, or you can go to like an indie fabric seller, of which there are many actually. And I think what it also does that is it gives you like a real appreciation for the good quality fabrics and also the work that goes into making certain garments. And where I would recommend that people start is just go on YouTube and just watch, you know, subscribe to a few channels of people that are either making their own clothes or doing like thrift flips, so buying stuff in thrift shops, charity shops, and then changing them into something else, because you'll start to see how possible it is, but you will also start to see actually that certain garments, an enormous amount of work goes into making them. And it kind of starts to give you an appreciation. You know, you start to look at things in your wardrobe and go, I have not appreciated this item of clothing and the work that went into producing it, not to mention designing it and the quality of the, you know, the fabric and so on. So yeah, that was a long answer, but those, I also, yeah, I quite like to go to, whenever a clothing swap pops up that's like plus size, I'll also go along to that, because it's so hard, like I said, to find nice stuff in bigger sizes in just the charity shop. So you know, when COVID's over, I'm hoping that there'll be a few more of those I can go along to as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. Honestly, re-establishing this connection to your clothes is very important in this conversation. And yeah, what would you recommend people who maybe don't have either the time or the necessary materials, if they would still like to delve into that?
So there's I mean, honestly, YouTube is like your biggest friend, really. You know, God bless my mother, she tried to teach me how to sew so many times and it just never went in. And it was only in, you know, like I said, recently, so I was like in my late 30s, when I kind of sat down with the sewing machine and just sort of was like, right, me and you and YouTube, and we're gonna, you know, it's gonna happen now or never. And I would recommend doing that to get your inspiration, first of all, because that will kind of help you to see that you can, you know, how many times, I guess, have any of all of you gone to a charity shop and seen something and go, I would love this without sleeves, or I would love this if it was shorter, or this is one size too big for me. It's so easy to make those changes. Like, it's so straightforward. And I think if you can start to see that that's so easy, it will kind of give you the appetite to go, all right then, do I look on Facebook Marketplace for a secondhand sewing machine? Do I look on Eventbrite to see if there are like sewing groups or classes that I can go to for cheap, you know? And do I go to the, you know, when I started, I went to the charity shops and I just bought like all of the £2, £3 sheets and curtains and things so that I could practice. And just, you know, I always used to kind of figure, if it's terrible, it's fine. It was just for practice. It was going to go to waste anyway. If it's good, I'll dye it a different color or something, you know, and keep it. So I would say definitely, first of all, make it a bit more palatable, make it a bit kind of easier to approach by going on YouTube and watching all these videos of people that, like I said, are kind of doing thrift flips or making their own stuff. And then if that gives you a bit of if you kind of think, I'd quite like to do that, I'd quite like to get into that, ask around your friends, see if anyone else has got a sewing machine that you can borrow, just to try it out. You can go into Abercon in central Manchester, and they have like free workshops and classes and things. So there are a lot of options. A lot of them, you will need to wait till COVID's over, but it's worth doing just to see if you think. Don't be frightened of it, is what I would say, because I was frightened of it for like 35 years, and it's so much easier than you think it's going to be.
Thank you for your answer. Yeah, I mean, this clearly shows that it goes far beyond our consumption. It incorporates social change, I would say. And honestly, I really feel like I would try now, give it a shot. Yeah.
And I guess also, like, policy change as well, and government change, because one of the things I found out last year was that in 2019 there was like a big environmental kind of report that came out about the impact of fast fashion in the UK, and various recommendations were made to the UK government, and some of the recommendations they rejected were mandatory sustainable action plans for like big clothing producers. They rejected that. They rejected the proposal that they would ban the incinerating or landfilling of unsold stock. And they rejected a charge of 1 penny per garment on producers so that they could invest in better like recycling practices and stuff. So I think it's kind of worth going, write to your MP or someone as well, because I think that it's all very well encouraging people to consume less and to change their consumer practices. But I think there's another part to it here, which is that we cannot rely on that. We cannot rely. I mean, of course, if everybody were to magically change how they wanted to consume overnight, it's capitalism. They will change how they're providing to us, but that's not going to happen. So I think we also need to kind of maybe think about how we can write to MPs, sign petitions, things like that, to sort of lobby for policy change as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that. We will have a round of questions open for everyone now. So if you have an answer, just speak, and we will try to have a nice conversation from that. Many people would say that sustainable fashion, they wouldn't say, but they definitely related to buying from 100% sustainable, ethical, maybe even vegan brands, and obviously lots of them are in the upper range for prices. So my question is it really expensive to produce sustainable fashion?
I would say yes, it is expensive to produce sustainable fashion. Well, it's not expensive, but it's expensive to our perception because we're used to buying incredibly cheap, very low quality and unethical clothing. But I would say to live a sustainable lifestyle in terms of fashion is actually not expensive, because one of the biggest things you can do is buy less. So if you're buying less, but the clothes you're buying are more expensive, you will still end up spending less money. So you just have to change your attitude, I suppose. The consumer needs to change their attitude, and the retailers need to change their manufacturing processes.
So consumption changes basically. We figured out in the poll, the majority of people here, they shop a few times a year. I believe the COVID pandemic has influenced that to some degree. There's also maybe an issue when you live with people, or maybe even your family, who aren't quite aware of a sustainable fashion. And what would you recommend to those people that do try and make an effort to improve that, but unfortunately live with others that don't?
Well, I think like how Claire kind of touched on there, the people who are finding themselves buying more frequently, they are probably, and this isn't for everyone, but they're probably buying from places of low quality. And the reason they're buying so much is because the clothes are, the cotton's falling apart, or they're getting holes and having to throw stuff out. Whereas if you decide, as Claire said, to buy less, but buy of higher quality, yes, okay, at the time, it might be a little bit more expensive, but you're going to end up buying a pair of jeans from, yes, maybe a bit more expensive brand, but they're going to last you 5-10+ years. We did some research into finding out that on average, a garment when it's bought in the UK only lasts 2.2 years before it's thrown out. So obviously, if you're buying from more sustainable brands, even if it is more expensive at the time, those clothing items are going to last you 5-10+ years. So the more people become informed about their buying decisions and consumerism, the more they're going to be even just doing a little bit of research into, okay, what kind of quality am I buying, rather than flash sales and 30p dresses and stuff. Like, you got to kind of get it into your heads that you're not going to be buying good quality clothing. And I think as well, as something someone touched on, you want to sort of be buying clothing items that you're going to want to wear for a number of months, years, that are going to last. Because if you're only buying one dress for one Saturday night and you're going to throw it out after, really, you're not really making great informed decisions about the environment and about sustainability. And obviously not everyone has the time, as you said, or has the kind of want to do that. But times are changing. I think a lot of people are deciding, okay, I want to do better for the environment. Veganism is becoming way more popular than it was 10 years ago. And if more people are caring about what they're putting inside their body, they should be caring about what they're putting on their body as well. And if people can sort of step by step just start making better decisions, and yeah, it's just going to get better, and hopefully the sustainability part of the fashion industry can start to get better. And yeah,
I think like leading on from that as well, I think maybe we could try and encourage people to have a good honest think about what their style actually is and what they like, because they may just be sort of consuming, fashions change like so quickly. They're seasonal, aren't they? And it's only, I think, in the last sort of, since I've started to make my own clothes, when I've started to kind of think to myself, you buy one pattern that costs you like 12 quid, and you can make that, if it's something that you like and that fits you, and obviously it will fit you because you'll make it to measure, you can use that pattern as many times as you want. So it's only since I've started to do that I've kind of thought, what is my style? What is my preference? I can make this one garment that I love, and like over and over again, in all different, with various sort of differences if I want to. And I think if people maybe sat down and started to think and challenge themselves to pick out the stuff that they love and they always go back to, and go like, what is it about that? What is it about that style that you really like? And if you kind of had to have, I don't know, not necessarily like a capsule wardrobe, but challenge yourself to a year maybe, or 6 months, where you really try and be intentional about what you're wearing and thinking about whether or not you like it, rather than just buying it because it's what's currently available. That might kind of lead people to a point where they're less inclined to just go like, that's all over Instagram at the moment and Pinterest, so I'm gonna wear it. But instead to go, well, what do I want to wear? What do I like? What's my style? What am I comfortable in? And what do I feel good in? And that might mean that you can end up with a more consciously curated set of clothes. And you'll actually think about, what you're buying and putting in your wardrobe. And that when you do choose those clothes, you can choose quality ones that are going to last and that you're going to enjoy.
Yeah, speaking of quality clothes, I believe that when you do want to make this conscious decision to buy the rather more expensive but longer lasting item, obviously there are maybe a few popular sustainable brands out there. However, how do you really find out if a brand does treat the workers' rights, has a minimal environmental footprint, and generally provides a good transparency? What's the best way to find that out?
So just a quick one, there's a magazine called Ethical Consumer. They have an online presence, and they do have a kind of membership. You can sort of sign up to them for, obviously, which you pay for, but there's a lot that you can find out for free on their website, and they rate companies of all kinds. So if you're really not sure whether to trust, you know, a brand's website, that's a good place to go to for a start. I don't know if any of the other panelists know any good tricks.
I also wanted to say about Fashion Revolution. They publish this it's called Fashion Transparency Index every year, when they say when they rank fashion brands based on their transparency. It's a big thing to read. You can have a look on this. I think that in 2020 the biggest score actually had H&M with around 70% transparency. And yeah, you can just have a look at how your brands that you shop with are transparent with their with when where they produce clothes. And I would also recommend Good on You app. They rank fashion brands based on the impact on environment. I think they rank it based on their impact on environment, how they treat their workers and the animals, like how the animals are treated. So if they source some exotic materials or no.
Yeah, those are some good methods to find out. We will take a look now at a few things that came from our guests, from the people here on the Zoom. I will share my screen in seconds. Noella, would you mind asking one last question before that?
Oh, okay. So this question maybe towards to Josh. So how do you feel about people selling secondhand clothes on Depop for like ridiculous price? For example, like a crop t-shirts for like 50 quid, like 50 quid. Like, does it make sense like for like secondhand accessibilities? Oh, sorry, I think you were on mute.
There we go. Yeah. So yeah, as I said, sort of for us, yeah, we know how frustrating Depop can be for buying and for selling. We get messages sort of daily of people asking to take like free postage and stuff. And as a brand, like we're always willing to sort of take little bits of money off or free postage. But yeah, when you come across sort of crop tops or sort of jeans that you know aren't worth that amount of money, it can be frustrating. And that's why we sort of base ourselves on having high quality products, but 100% keeping it at an affordable price. We always check between the three of us. Like if we're not sure, we always do a bit of research. Sometimes it's three guys, so we come across some women's clothing, and sometimes we don't know for sure. So we'll always double check and make sure that we're not selling a piece of clothing for an extortionate price. We don't really do that anyway. But yeah, everyone's been on Depop. You know how frustrating that app can be. But yeah, it's definitely a great platform to use because it allows brands like ours to sort of get and collect clothing items that have been unloved or no longer wanted, and to take off people who either don't have the time or use for them anymore, and we bring them back into circulation. So yeah, as I said, it can be a frustrating app at times, but you just got to be patient with it and yeah, try and find those brands that do sell for good prices. And yeah, you can sometimes have a chat with. We're always open if people want to message us and talk to us. We have an Instagram page as well. We're always willing to sort of talk to people. And as you said there, even messaging people and asking people where do you get your clothes from, or where do you sort of do you look after your workers and stuff. Brands will always try and be transparent. I know obviously some of the big brands won't do that, but yeah, small sustainable places like ours, like definitely base ourselves upon that. So
thank you. And this question is coming from Mentimeter, and one person asked, like, do the panelists have emails or any social media account they would be happy to share with them?
Yeah, so I guess I'll drop my like my blog address in if people want to have a look at that. I'll do that now.
Thank you.
Put my email address in, that's fine.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Do you want it in the chat?
Yes, please.
Okay.
No.
So yeah, we, like at the beginning of the event, we asked you what does sustainability mean to you. And yeah, I think that many of the things that we said are also in the minds of our audience. I mean, environmental sustainability plays in with our conscious consumer behavior. We have ethics, which play an important role in how the garments are produced. And yeah, I think we touched up on a few of these. I will take a look at one of the audience questions. What is the best sustainable fashion? Okay, that's a bit broad, but anyone want to answer that? Quick and short.
Secondhand. I don't know. I'm again one of the technologists who might know the strict answer, but I would have thought secondhand. Don't know.
I think just buying less. That's the best way to be sustainable. Buy less and choose clothes that will last you and that you love.
Yeah, and I would also say that take care of your clothes and maybe don't wash them after every use, just wash them when they're dirty. But like most clothes, they don't need to be washed after every use. And washing makes them a bit weaker. So like take appropriate care of them. Read the labels.
Sounds good. Thank you. We got one interesting question here. I'm going to read it out loud. I and perhaps many people would not be keen on buying secondhand underwear. What materials or which shops should we look for when thinking about more sustainable options?
I buy mine from Marks and Spencer's. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if that's, there are things that I have to say I really want to start making my own though. That's something that I want to try and do. And there's a lot of like nice little classes and things, like if you go on Skillshare and things like that, there are little kind of classes about how to make your own undies. So I think that would be quite nice. But yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. And again, maybe the technologists know the technically correct answer. I don't buy secondhand underwear either.
No, I don't buy secondhand underwear either. Underwear is actually, I've thought about this so many times. Underwear is one of the hardest things to buy sustainably because, yeah, you don't want to buy secondhand underwear, and also it often needs like elastane. It needs components that aren't natural. So I don't have any suggestions, I'm afraid, but I think look for things that are mostly cotton, and there will be tons of sustainable underwear brands online if you look for them. I just don't know what they are, I'm afraid.
That's absolutely okay. Yeah, I think that's the challenge, I believe, finding a sustainable option or a sustainable choice for every piece of clothing that we wear. But yeah, I think this has been a very interesting and well-rounded discussion. I would like to thank everyone for coming today, and especially our panelists. You can find their Instagram down here. And also, we would very much appreciate if you would fill in the survey with the QR code here. Apart from that, Noella, do you have any final thoughts?
Now, we really wish to answer all the questions, but like we were out of time. So if we able to do another event, hopefully we can answer more questions. And thank you for coming today.
Yeah,
Thanks.
feel
Thanks
free
for having
to
us.
go to our social media and yeah, give us any question, a message, ideas, anything. All right. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for having us.
All right, bye.